Welcome to this Alteruna tutorial. Today, we will use the third-person template from Unity and add the Alteruna basics. After we have created our project in Unity, we must download and install the Alteruna package from the Unity Asset Store. Now, let's create a new game object that will function as our multiplayer manager. In the hierarchy, press the right mouse button, select Alteruna, and click on Multiplayer. A new game object is created with the multiplayer script attached to it. The next step will be to set up the avatar that will be spawned after a new player has joined. Select your player prefab and attach the avatar script on it. Great! Now we will set up our multiplayer component to spawn and player prefab for each player that joins the room. We do this by selecting the multiplayer game object and set the setting Spawn Avatar from Disable to Spawn on Join. As you can see, we have additional settings that we can set now. Select your player prefab and drag this on the avatar prefab to spawn. Let's remove our default avatar prefab. We don't need it anymore. Alteruna has a prefab example. This prefab will show you how to create a UI with join and leave buttons. For now, we will just use the default prefab. Now let's start our game. It works. Now let's build the game and try to have another player into the scene. Great, that works as well. But as you can see, the animations and positions of the player are not synced with other players. We will start with the positions first. We will talk about the animations in a later video. To add synchronization of the position, we need to add a transform synchronizable to the player prefab. Great. Now let's test it once more. It seems like only the rotation is synchronized, and both players control the same player prefab. Let's make sure the player only controls its own prefab first. Let's set the player input script on the player prefab on disabled by default. Great. Next, let's edit the third-person controller script provided by the Unity template. Here we need to have a reference to the Alteruna avatar component. We can do this by using the getComponent method in the start method of the script. Now that we have the reference, we can set the player input on enabled if the prefab that was spawned is owned by the player. We could also disable the third-person controller script, but for now, let's just return the update loop if we are not the owner of this prefab. Let's test our game once more. Great, it's working. We control our own player prefab now. We now learned how to spawn players, their prefabs, but we also know that we need to disable controls for game objects that are not owned by the player. It's important to understand that each prefab spawns with all the attached scripts. We need to make sure they are only run by the owners of that prefab. In the next video, we will synchronize the player animations. Thanks for watching.